And that's the way I started stretching myself, pushing myself out of my comfort zone, because growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be. I had to stretch myself, and stretching hurts. Leadership isn't about having all the answer. It's about the courage to go first. Let's do it.
Artlist.io.
Have you ever wondered if your pain disqualified you from helping others? Do you carry wounds so deep you're not sure if healing is even possible, let alone helpful to others? What if the very thing that broke you is what is going to help you rebuild your life? And so if that is you, this episode is for you, because I've walked through pain, deep, raw, personal pain. And what I have learned is this: your deepest wounds can lead to your greatest wisdom. So let's talk about how I turn pain into purpose and how you can do the same thing, because stuck stings and sucks. And it's time to break through and rise. It is time to stop spinning and stop winning, moving from the midpoint to the high point. Welcome to the High Point Talk, where we dive into life, leadership, and legacy from the low points to the high points, so you can live well, wisely, and humbly. This is your space for real stories, transformational lessons, and bold leadership that helps you rise from pain to purpose, from surviving to leading with significance. So, here is what we're going to be talking about, or this is the foundation that I want to set before we get into the topic that I'm going to talk about today. And the key thing is, the foundation is self-leadership. Because before I could lead others, I need to learn how to lead myself. The turning point in my journey, when I went from that low point to the midpoint to the high point, wasn't just external, it was internal. I needed to do a lot of work inside of me. So I wasn't just waiting to get better, like for something to just magically happen. I was waiting on me to wake up, step up, and take ownership of my own growth. That's what needed to happen. So I didn't need another excuse. I didn't need another decision. I didn't really need permission from anybody. In fact, I didn't even need a plan. There was something that needed to happen internally. What I needed to do is I needed to make some paradigm shift in my own life, take ownership, and be the person responsible for myself before even getting to try to lead others. So one of the tools that I'm also going to be sharing with you today, they come from the book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by my mentor, John Maxwell. These are 15 laws that help you figure out how to design your growth plan. And one of the laws, in fact, is the law number one that I started not only learning but practicing, was the law of intentionality. And the law says growth doesn't just happen. I didn't drift into strength. I decided to grow. I chose to confront what hurt, my wounds from my childhood, from my teen years. I made that conscious decision to go there and specifically start dealing with those wounds that I had. And I realized I could never lead others well until I was willing to lead myself through discomfort, through discipline, and with clear direction. You know, self-leadership is about moving from the fault to design. It's about being brutally honest with yourself where you are and boldly committed to who you are becoming. So here's the truth. I stopped hoping for change and I started choosing it. Healing was never passive. It required me to face the pain, renew my mind, and rewrite the narrative and show up even when it was hard. So, what about you? Have you ever felt that way? What about you? Are you waiting for change or are you actually choosing it? What pain do you need to confront instead of avoid? What old narrative are you still believing that needs to be rewritten? And most importantly, are you showing up even when it's hard? Because here's the reality. If you don't lead yourself with courage and clarity, you'll never be able to lead others with purpose and impact. So I have to do several changes in my life, and some of those were some specific shifts that needed to happen for my leadership to start moving into a place where I could lead others. So those are the things that I'm going to talk to you about today. 3 leadership lessons that changed my life. How I grew through pain. Once I took responsibility for my healing and committed to self-leadership, everything began to change. But it didn't happen overnight. And it didn't happen by accident either. There were 3 foundational lessons that reshaped the way I saw myself, and perhaps this might help you as well. These weren't just concepts that I learned. These were experiences that I was living. They were conviction I have to live out, and they didn't come from textbook. They were forged in fire in my life. So here's lesson number 1. I needed to get clarity of purpose. Healing opened my eyes to my assignment, and the deeper I heal, the clearer I saw. For years, I thought I was just surviving, and I thought I was sentenced to that. But the truth is, I was being shaped for something greater. When the noise of pain began to quiet, I could finally hear the whisper of purpose. And I realized that my life wasn't just meant to recover, it was meant to redeem. And so another law that I learned from this amazing material, this book that transformed my life, is the law of awareness. You must know yourself to grow yourself. But there is also another law that is called the law of the mirror, where you must see the value in yourself to add value to others. So I needed to know myself. I needed to know my values. I needed to know what are the things that matter most to me. I needed to know my roles, my responsibilities. I needed to get clear about all of those things. And then I needed to start seeing that value, because there were a lot of people coming to me and say, hey, I see your potential. I see that you're going to do great things in your life. And in that moment, in that pit, in that dark hole that I was, I could not see the value in myself. That's why the law of the mirror helped me, because you must see the value in yourself to add value to yourself. And before I could discover my calling, I had to believe I was worth the discovery. I couldn't walk in purpose if I didn't first recognize that my story had worth. My voice had a weight, and my life had value. I did not see all of those things before. When I embraced healing, purpose came into focus, and I began to see myself differently, not as damaged, but as destined, not as a victim of my past, but as a vessel for something greater. That's when purpose stopped being a mystery and it started becoming a mission. So I start seeing all of those things in myself. I remember having so many insecurities. I mean, if you see the pictures of my childhood, you see that I'm not even smiling. I felt so subconscious about a lot of things in my life, and I didn't see the value in me. So let me ask you, what are the patterns, passions, and pain pointing you to your purpose? What are those insecurities that are still keeping you down and slave to a life that you are not living at your full potential? Where in your life is clarity waiting on courage? Do you truly see the value in yourself? Or are you still waiting for the world to validate what's already inside of you? Let me tell you some of the things that I felt so insecure about it. I have fat lips. And I didn't like my mouth growing up. And that's why whenever you see the pictures in childhood, you'll see me like this. I didn't want to smile. I thought it was just, I was called fat lips. Well, some of the things that I started seeing and changing is that once I moved to the United States, what I realized is that I was born in the wrong country. Because here in the United States, people pay a lot of money to get lips like mine, when in reality, I had them naturally like that. Those were some of the paradigm shifts in my mind. I started seeing things differently and embracing myself, the way I was created, even with simple little things, so to speak, as my fat lips. It's just so funny for me to think about those things now. But I started now liking myself. I started seeing the value in myself, and I started seeing a lot of things in myself. So the lesson number 2 is I learned and I got courage to serve others. And really, I started thinking about how can I really add value to other people. The healed version of me had something to give. Once I found clarity, the next step was terrifying, and I had to act. I had to stop hiding, and I had to start showing up. I had to share my story before it felt polished, speak the truth before I felt ready, and serve others while I was still healing. I wasn't going to wait until everything was completely fixed. And there's what I once again learned about the law of the rubber band, which says growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be. And I started pushing myself, and I started saying, I can do this. And I started just doing a lot of things. I remember, I never went to school to learn English. You know how I learned English? And this is a confession because my grandparents were pastors, so I grew up at church. So I learned English by translating the Guns N' Roses songs from my cassette tapes. You remember those tapes, if you're from the 80s, that had the lyrics inside the tape, and you like an accordion, you just open it like this and you'll see all the lyrics. I got me an English dictionary, English, Spanish, and I started just pushing myself. I want to learn English. And I did. I will make up words when I was little. And that's the way I started stretching myself, pushing myself out of my comfort zone, because growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be. I had to stretch myself, and stretching hurts. Leadership isn't about having all the answer. It's about the courage to go first. Let's do it. My friends believe me that I knew English. I will make up words all the time. I'll do it phonetically. And even now, my English is not perfect. My English is not very good looking, but guess what? I show up and try it every time because I continue stretching myself. And I got that courage to raise my hand and say, hey, I want to do that. In order to grow, I started serving others. I didn't wait for the right moment or the right time. So here's my question to you. What are you holding back that someone else desperately needs? You don't know that. So I invite you to think about it. What is that? What is that is holding you back that is going to help somebody else? Where do you need to stretch? Even if it scares you, it's okay. Do it poorly. Start somewhere. Lesson number 3 that I learned is contribution that matters. I found contributions that matter and start just serving others. When I gave away my story, I found my strength. I was so ashamed for the longest. I lived with guilt, with shame, with anger, with a lot of insecurities in my life. But I had to get to that turning point to get to where I'm at now. And healing gave me clarity. Courage gave me movement. But contribution, that's what gave me all the meaning. When I started making things about other people, adding value. That's why my mission in life, if you hear me talking, is to connect with people, add value to them, and empower them to make a difference in their own world. I realized my growth was never just about me. It was always meant to flow through me. My scars weren't just signs of survival. They became maps for others. My mess became the message that I have for you now. A message of hope, healing, and now leadership. Another law is the law of contribution. Growing yourself enables you to grow others. The more you invest in yourself, the more you're going to be capable to serve others. The law of design talk about to maximize growth, you need to develop strategies as well. You need to think about, how am I going to do this? What am I going to need to achieve this? Who am I going to be adding value to? Then comes the law of consistency. Motivation gets you going because we get inspired whenever we have an aha moment and we're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write, and I'm going to write a book. I'm going to make a video. I'm going to make a post. I'm going to do a lot of things. But really, this is the key. Consistency. Consistency compounds. Because motivation gets you going, but discipline keeps you growing. So I stop disqualifying myself. And I stop asking, who am I to lead? Who am I to share my story with other people, with people that are going to be in these places of darkness as well, and with me being there for them? Who am I to lead? And I started asking, who needs what I have learned? And I developed a strategy to share, to serve, and to stretch others through what once stretched me. And I stay consistent. Not just when I felt like it, not just when I felt inspired, but even when it felt inconvenient for me. Because growth without giving is incomplete. And that shift changed everything. So here's what I discovered. The significance doesn't come from what you achieve. It comes from what you give away. Because success is about me, but significance is about others. It comes from what you give away. And the greatest impact doesn't come from the platform you stand on, but from the people you pour into. So let me ask you this question. Who needs to hear your story? Who needs to hear what you lived through? What hard-earned lesson are you sitting on that someone else is still desperately searching for? What if your breakthrough isn't just for your freedom, but for someone else? Imagine that you have that key right there to unlock this potential for somebody that is ready and willing to hear your story. Now, let me share with you how is it that I was able to achieve this. I have a framework that allow me to be able to do this in a very very practical way, because I want you to stop spinning and start winning, because stuck stings and sucks, and I want you to be able to get out of there. So here is the framework that I want to share with you. The number one thing you need to do is ask the question, where are you? You don't know. If you don't know where you are, you won't be able to get to where you want to go. Awareness is very important because you need to know your current reality. You need to own your truth. I remember whenever I was in college that I got a phone call from one of my best friends and say, "Hey, Heber, can you come pick me up?" And guess what the first question I asked my friend? The question that I asked my friend was, "Where are you?" And his reply was, "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I'm so drunk. I don't know where I'm at." And so I started asking me, well, what do you see to your left? What do you see to your right? What do you see in front of you? Give me something. You need to figure out, where are you? Know your current reality, own your truth, not more hiding. And what that means really, that is awareness. We need to know where we are before we start trying to figure out where to go. Because some of us are unclear, confused, unsure, perplexed, you name it. So this is the framework. It's very simple. Where are you? And that is awareness. And then the second question is, where do you want to go? So once you figured out where you are, then you say, okay, begin with the end in mind. That's what Stephen Covey said. Where do you see yourself? Where do you want to go? And really what that is talking about is vision. You need to clarify what success means to you. Healing. What does healing mean to you? An impact that you are going to be sharing with others. So clarify what success, healing, and impact look like for you. Ask those questions. Where do you see yourself? What are you envisioned for this to be in 3 months? Don't even go, you don't have to figure out the rest of your life. You just need to know what's the next step for the next thing where you're going to go. So that's question number 2. Then I have another question. How are you going to get there? That's a great question. Because when my friend called me, I could have walked, I could have reading the motorcycle or a car. I mean, how are you going to get there? That's a great question. And what that demands is a strategy. You need to design your growth plan. That's one of the main questions that I ask people when I coach, when I mentor. Do you have a growth plan? I do. And I follow it. I design it. That's my strategy. I check it out. You need to create a system that fits your life, your timing, your wiring, everything. So how are you going to get there? That is the question that you need to figure out for your strategy. And then here's another question, which is a very important one too. What is in the way? And here's the tragedy of this sometimes, is that's why awareness is important. Because sometimes the biggest obstacles in our life is ourselves. So what's in the way? You need to recognize those limiting beliefs, distractions, or unresolved wounds that you have in your life. For me, my core wound was rejection. That was my core wound, and I needed to figure it out. I was afraid to be rejected. That's why I didn't try a lot of things. That's why I self-sabotaged many times. That's why I underperformed, because I was so afraid. And I didn't realize that that wound, that rejection wound, was so deep inside of my soul, and it was being an obstacle for me. So you need to be able to recognize that, because that is what becomes many times the obstacles that are holding you back for you to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. Recognize limiting beliefs, distractions, and more importantly, unresolved wounds that you might have in your life. And here is the last question that I want to leave with you. How would you know you got there? How you need to make sure that you know. How would you know? Describe it, paint it. Define what progress looks like for you. And you know what? Measure it, because you cannot grow anything that you don't measure. So measure what matters. Define that program or that progress, the way it's going to look like. So that's going to be your results. And that's why it's going to be very important for you to level up and for you to stop spinning and start winning. So you got awareness, vision, strategy, obstacles, and results. That's how you do it. So you level up what you need to do. So I wanted to share this a framework, because this is what helped me. So the question is, where are you now? That's the awareness. Second question, where do you want to go? That is the vision. Third question, how would you get there? That's your strategy. Fourth question, what's holding you back? And fifth question, how would you know you made it? That will be results. Because growth isn't just a dream, it's a decision that you have to make. And purpose isn't random. You know, nobody have ever gone or gotten to the top of the hill by accident. Same as there is no such a thing. I have not read the book Sliding Down to Success. So purpose isn't random. It is the result of intentional leadership. And your wisdom is the reward of walking through your wounds and refusing to waste them. So here is the final reflection for you and I. Leadership isn't a title, it's a testimony. It's not about being the loudest person in the room or even the smartest person in the room. It's about being real, transparent, authentic, vulnerable. So you go from stuck to stretch. You go from pain to purpose. You go from wounds to wisdom. And that's how leaders are born. So here's the call to action. If this episode stirs something in you, I'm going to ask you this big favor. Could you please like it, but also comment what lesson from your wounds are you now ready to share? And let me know. So like it, comment, and type this question there and the answer as well. Share what lesson from your wounds are you now ready to share? And then I ask you to subscribe. This is my birthday month, and we have gotten to 24 subscribers on my channel. Would you help me get to 50 subscribers?
Artlist.io.
Share this with other people. And once again, I hope I added value to you today through this episode. So thank you so much for staying with me. I love you. Take care. I'll see you next time.